We won't hear the intro music?
No, we won't hear the intro music, but John's got it. Welcome to Emotion Chips, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I am your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my moving co-host, Mallory Redmond.
Good morning.
Mal, how's it going?
It's fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. We're going to be fine. We're in the midst of moving.
Yes.
And that I am working overtime not to be a stressy Bessie.
A stressy Bessie. That was such an edited version.
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Historically not my best self when moving. I get a
Yes.
little frazzled.
Yes, a little out of sorts.
Yeah.
Per se.
So right now there's boxes everywhere and there's just so much to be done.
Yes.
And I want to just do it and be done with it. But it has to be a process.
Well,
It's a lot of work.
I'm sorry you're stressed,
No, I'm great.
but it's good to be here with you back in person,
Yes.
not doing it from hundreds of miles away.
Right.
I believe this is episode 15.
Are you sure?
Nope,
Okay.
not at all. Could be episode 16, but we'll see.
Oh, I was going to say
By
less.
the time it makes its way to the website, we will know exactly what episode it is.
Yes. We're in the teens for sure.
Coronavirus still going on, though the numbers are dropping. State of Ohio opened back up this week, at least for doctor's appointments. And then I believe it's this upcoming Monday that retail will be allowed to open.
Okay.
So we are on our way. I was reading a story last week about, Georgia was in the spotlight with opening up a little earlier than most states, despite numbers going up.
Yeah.
So I was reading a story about an outbreak in Albany, Georgia, where someone was at a funeral, not knowing that they had the virus, and accidentally spread it to a lot more people.
At a funeral.
Yeah, which led to a number of other funerals.
Yeah, right.
It was in the Washington Post. I'll grab a screenshot for those that are interested in reading the story.
One of the saddest parts of all of this is how restricted that all of these people are dying, and then you can't have a funeral for them.
Yeah.
Or if you do, it has to be, like 10 people or less, right?
Right.
There's so many lives to be honored that don't get what some might call like a proper burial or the one that they deserve.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, for sure. My father-in-law had a son that passed away, and that was the same thing for their case, that only so many people could go in for the visitation at a time. And,
So the person who had the virus at the funeral, have they passed away? Did it say in the article?
I don't believe that they did, but there were
Can you imagine?
a lot of other people who passed in that county because of this situation, not knowing it. And it's not like it could have been prevented. Nobody knew at the time what was going on.
Yeah.
So very sad, but hopefully we will be through this sooner than later. So much is coming out as to where it came from and who is behind it, and is it more than just a virus? We will hear about this for months, if not years, as to what's going on.
Yes, lots of very passionate opinions when it comes to that.
Yeah.
At least if you go on social media.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that it reminded me of when reading about this funeral was just the idea of what we pass along, just in the tone of an emotion ship, just what we are carrying and tend to pass along to those that are around us and do not know it.
Right.
I was joking with Mallory, for those of you that were unable to hear us before we hit record, just about her feeling a little, or coming across as a little heavy, which when you are packing and have two little ones and boxes everywhere, it has a tendency to wear you out.
Yeah.
And I could feel that, right? Just
I know, that's so frustrating to me.
Why I wonder why it's frustrating, Mallory.
Stop, don't analyze me.
Do we want to talk about
No.
why that's frustrating?
Move on.
For you being a human being? But it goes to show that often because of the pace of American culture and how we've been conditioned, which if you listen to the episode with on brainwash with Dr. Perlmutter, who's a neurologist, social media and a lot of the commercials have conditioned us to like move very fast and to go from one image to the next and to scroll and to scroll and to click and to scroll. And one of the negative sides to that is often we'll get into a room and someone will be carrying anxiety or anger, which is a physical reality, that what's going on the inside is producing different hormones and different chemical reactions in their body that is energetically coming out of their pores. And for years, if not decades, I would walk into a room, spend a certain amount of time with people in that room, walk out feeling heavy or angry. This actually happened to me just the other day, where I was in a meeting for about 2 hours, walked out of it and physically felt like I was starting to come down with something.
Wow.
Only to find out that this was a very anxious person that I had just spent that time with.
Yeah. Right.
And so, one of the things that we're talking about on this podcast, an emotion ship is energy in motion. And there's a relationship to being in a room with someone and not being fully aware of what they just heard or what they're dealing with and the energy that is putting off and how that is going to affect you.
Right.
And so there's that relationship or that connection there that we want to help people become more aware of, so that you don't have to walk out of that 2-hour meeting, feel really bad. And what happens, and I was just reading a medical journal about this, is often when we are with someone that is struggling with a certain attitude or they're carrying a certain situation with them, they never acknowledge it. Our body feels it. And then from there, we have an opportunity to acknowledge that we feel different and let it go. Or if we remain ignorant of it and we start to analyze and say, oh, I wonder if I was around somebody that had COVID-19, or I wonder if they were carrying, whatever it is, then all of a sudden our body starts to work through a response and starts to put us in a position to respond to something that is real, when really we were just dealing with someone else's energy.
Right. Yep. Oh, it's so powerful. What that makes me think of is if you're ever struggling with your own, like feeling like you're insignificant, or you're not seen or heard, like you just feel kind of worthless, take that into a room of a group of people.
Yeah.
And see, you are impacting people with
Sure.
the energy that you're bringing. Even if your energy is a sense of worthlessness, that is powerful.
Yeah.
And so if you think that you have nothing to offer, bring your sense of worthlessness into a room and see how people feel when they leave your presence.
Yeah. So tomorrow, as you know, I am auditioning I got a call back for a TED Talk here, and I'm talking about poverty.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that we don't understand as a culture about poverty, that it is so much more than money. Mm-hmm. And when we make it all about money, then if you don't have it, you're missing out, but you also are not contributing to or aware of how much power you have to change a certain situation. And so when we process poverty to be a money situation, then we never consider anything else as to what could be creating that poverty. And so when you are unaware of the power of your attitude and how it affects everyone around you, eventually we get to a place like we are at in this country with systemic poverty everywhere, because we have viewed it primarily through one lens, which is you either do or do not have money, when the reality of it is that you have resources based on everything else in your life, like your attitude, your character, the depth of your relationships, your levels of conscientiousness, that leads to resources. Mm-hmm. And so when we start to think about it the right way, we position ourselves to get out of financial poverty, because we have become more aware of where poverty can exist in other areas of our life.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's life-changing.
Well, I think in this specific situation, when we're talking about being a carrier, it's a wonderful opportunity to start each and every day off asking ourselves, like, where are we at? What are we dealing with? What are our major emotions? Meaning, what is the energy that is in motion all around me?
Yeah.
It could have been stimulated from something I watched or read before going to bed, a text message or an email. It could be from a phone call that you took from a parent that you don't have the healthiest relationship with, or maybe now your role has reversed and you're being the parent and they're being the child. Like, I think it's helpful to start each and every day off by just doing a little bit of a survey to say, who am I? What makes me valuable? Where am I at? What is the energy and motion around me? And just because energy is in motion around me, that doesn't mean that is who I am, or that I have to cave into that energy or that message that is being spoken to me that could be decades old from a parent or a grandparent.
Gosh, that's it, right? Like, you think of a difficult exchange with, like, the person who works at the grocery store or a restaurant or whatever, like they're taking something out on you. And I, at least, am prone to think, like, what did I do? Like, I will stew over that, right? Like, not only just what did I do, but like, why are they so angry with me? Like, why, I've been dealing a lot with health insurance problems, and that's not been the most delightful experience. And I get off the phone and I'm like, why are those people so angry with me? Like, I'm just trying to get this figured out, when really it's like, this could be something that happened before they were even alive on this earth.
Yeah, for sure.
That is in them that they are dealing with.
Well, and the biggest thing that I would shout to everyone listening right now is, you have got to understand that you are not your feelings. You're not your feelings. Yeah. You have feelings, but your feelings are responding to a lot of invisible particles, nanoparticles, subatomic particles that we now know exist and that are smaller than atoms and can be put into the universe from across the world, and depending upon what's happening, can affect you. And so what we have really failed to realize with all of our technology and the advancement of communication is that we are not our feelings. You're not your feelings. But a lot of us give in to and entertain our feelings in a way that make them reality.
Yeah. So how have you gotten away from doing that? What do you then do with your feelings, or how do you view them?
Well, I get really frustrated by a mentality or a life that fluctuates up and down.
Yeah.
That really bothers me. If you don't want to do anything more than whatever you're doing, like, we have to understand that the more epic the life we want to live and the more lives we want to impact, often the more danger or risk you're going to take on. So if you don't want to live out this epic, eternal life that impacts a lot of people, just understand that the opposite of that is a boring life that you're not going to be satisfied with. If you do want to take those things on, you're going to have to divorce how you feel about what you're doing and where you are from the long-term goal. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't live a boring life and not be dealing with those risks and those thoughts and those feelings and be happy. But if you do want to be happy, you're going to have to live into what is your purpose, what were you created to do, how can you impact people, but know that risk and danger come with that. And the reason why I said that is because I wanted to set it up for this. You have got to be able to divorce how you feel about who you are and how you feel about where you are from what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you can't climb Everest and not ever feel like you're going to lose your life. Right. And I think, going back to answering your question, like how have I dealt with it, or what do I do to deal with it is I sense, and I think a healthy person does, that I want to make a difference with my life. I want to impact other people. There is no getting around the risk and the sense of danger and criticism and judgment that comes with that. So I finally just got upset with knowing this is what I signed up for. I know these are the liabilities. Why am I going to let them continue to affect me so much? It is part of the plan. It's part of the process that you have to be criticized. You have to go through tough times. You have to face resistance. You have to deal with disappointment. And so for me, I just got tired of this big fluctuation. I'm happy when I feel like things are going right. I'm not happy when I feel like they're going wrong. I'm happy when I feel like they're going right, because what ends up happening is you're exhausted. And your body gets into this state of fight or flight where you're getting no rest. You can't grow. Your body can't repair itself. You can't advance. Your body starts, and your biology and your mind start working against you. And it's just like,
well, and you're exhausting everybody around you. Talk about
For
being
sure.
impoverished relationally. I mean,
yeah,
people,
for sure.
people can't hang. I think that I would love to know more, like really practically, like nuts and bolts. When, like, you are impressive to me in that, like, you'll get an email or a text message and either like not have to read it right away,
Right.
or it coming from someone who it's probably like an issue, a criticism of you, something, or you'll read it and like still be well.
Sure.
Like you'll deal with it, but it's like you're not losing sleep over this. For me, I'm coming out of like my infancy with that,
Right.
because I will lose sleep.
Yeah.
I will get sick. Like
Sure.
it really, especially criticism about me or people who I feel like misunderstand me. And for you, like that happens more often than not.
Yeah.
What does it look like to really
Sure.
like remain grounded in the midst of that?
It comes with the territory, right? So the higher you go up Everest, the more opportunities there are to fall off. And I have just gotten to a place in my life through watching a father and a grandfather who were the same way in being entrepreneurial and being pioneers, wanting to pioneer different ways of serving people. I have gotten to a place where I don't want to be controlled by my feelings. And so it is not uncommon that if I get overwhelmed by my inbox, I will delete all of my inbox and say, if it's important, it will come back to me.
Oh my goodness.
And the reason for it is I refuse to be controlled by my feelings.
Yeah.
And so I've been through some things over the last 18 months that as soon as 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have lost a lot of sleep over it. And I think what I've learned is just nothing is that important. If you do believe that you're going to live forever, if you do believe that there is a God and that God is looking out for you, like moving forward and climbing mountains and going through valleys are part of the process. How you choose to respond and manage your feelings through those different phases of the journey is up to you. Yeah. And it's like a muscle. You're not great at it at first and you can't lift a lot of weight, but the more you do it, the stronger you become and the better you become at managing those feelings. Feelings are not facts. Sometimes they are, but often they're not, because feelings come from our brain, whose responsibility is to analyze what we're up against and tell us worst case scenario so that we don't face that unprepared. Mm-hmm. I have to understand that my brain serves in the role of a consultant that says, here's worst case scenario. Now, most of us have not trained ourselves in a way that we can say, okay, that's worst case scenario, but often that's not how it turns out.
Yeah.
And so you have to have that in your database to say, okay, this is what could happen. But, I quote all the time, the longest study of social human behavior is that longevity project that has gone over 100 years with 1,500 people. And their statistic was 98% of what happened, or of what we fear, 98% of what we fear never happens to us. Yeah. And sometimes it is the 2% case and it does happen to us. But I think I've gotten to a place where I realize that the risk and danger of living an adventurous, exciting life cannot be eliminated. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to be controlled by my feelings. So often I've just gotten in a habit where often if I'm worried, right? Like I walked out of my house today and was doing a couple things in the garage before heading this way. And I just had kind of like a weighty, anxious feeling start to come over me. And so I stopped literally in my tracks. I physically stopped and said, okay, what's behind this? Right? Where am I at? What's going on? What's the message that I'm telling myself that would allow me to worry? And so within 2 or 3 seconds, I confronted it and said, here are 3 or 4 things you have to be really thankful for, or to express gratitude over. And I just stopped and said a little prayer of gratitude and got in my car and took a deep breath and relaxed my lower back and my shoulders.
And you came and drove to my heaviness and worry.
Well,
Perfect. Moving Mallory.
it's part of the relationship.
But I am curious, like how you maintain a level of empathy when you are so grounded in and feelings are not facts, right? Because a lot of times the people that you're that you're working with or you're interacting with might be kind of spinning out of control in terms of their anxiety or their sense of groundedness because their feelings are factual to them.
Sure.
And so how do you remain empathetic or kind of with them and know that feelings are not facts?
Yeah, sure. That can be difficult based on the time of day and how long you have gone, right? Because our emotional willpower, our endocrine, which is made up of our fat, our hypothalamus, pituitary gland, adrenal glands, and thyroid, are like batteries that the longer they go into a day or a week or a month or a year, if you're not practicing intentional rest, they get worn out and can struggle. And so I would just say that, I don't always do as well as I want to do with them. But it's the 2 A's. It's awareness and acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm aware that I'm going to walk into a business and there's already energy and motion, like a vortex in there, and I'm about to step into it, I would be wise to get familiar with what I sense is going on in there before I jump in and start cracking jokes or cracking the whip.
Yeah.
And so when I see that an employee or a friend is overwhelmed, right? First of all, I'm aware that things are going on, and then acknowledgement, I'll say, okay, they're stressed. Let's give them a minute and then ask them the question, how are things going? You appear to be overwhelmed. What can I do? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And so we don't always handle it the way we want to on a personal level,
sure,
but it really comes back to those 2 A's, which is, awareness, creating awareness for there is energy and motion behind this reality, and it is the real reality. There's a manifestation of the energy and motion, and then there's the reality that's creating that manifestation. And I was talking to my son last night. We were out running a couple of errands, and he was asking me about Christianity and Catholicism and where they meet and the relationship. And I was telling him the story of how Catholicism got started, and he was asking me specific questions about what he has heard Protestants say about Catholics, etc. And I said, what you have to understand is that at the end of the day, whether it's Christian or Protestant or Catholic, those are words that their sole purpose is to describe a reality, but the description is never greater than the reality. And our opportunity through science and curiosity is to always get to what is the reality here. And so when you look at the life of Jesus, Jesus was always saying, you've heard it said this, here's what it really is. Mm-hmm. Here's the ultimate reality, because when you mess around with the manifestation of the reality, you're really not going to get anywhere, right? Just ways to describe it differently, etc. It's what's really going on in this environment that's producing this outcome, and that's why we call it an emotionship. We have a relationship to the energy that's actually driving everything, and often don't know it, and we're just looking at what's coming about or what's happening, trying to change it and talk to that when you're just not going to have the results.
Right. Yeah. Wow. What a substantial conversation to have with your son.
Well, it's good because I think my responsibility as a parent is to help my to give my child the tools that they need to actually handle life and respond to life, versus where a lot of people end up being, and that is managing and juggling manifestations
Right.
of what's happening. And so in theory, he was saying, well, I've heard, some people say that Catholics are Christians. I've heard some people say that Catholics aren't Christians. I've heard some people say that Catholics will be in heaven. I've heard some people, and I said, okay, you're really dealing with something that doesn't even matter, because whether it's a Catholic or a Protestant, you have the equal amount of time and opportunity to go through the motions and not have a heart that is really surrendered.
Yeah.
Right? So don't get sucked into the managing of the descriptions of the reality. Figure out what the reality is and go from there.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
That's so good.
And so I was, as I was reading this article in the Washington Post about this community in Georgia, it made me think, COVID-19 made me think about emotion ships and how we are carriers of certain emotions without even knowing it. And then I was helping someone through Body Garage Dayton with weight loss. They were asking me about what they could do because they're sick and tired of trying different diets and not being able to lose weight. And one of the things that I say to people who are struggling with their weight is they have got to understand what they inherited from their parents or grandparents. That there are multiple studies. I'm looking at one right now where it talks about that stress comes with your mother's breast milk. That whatever your mother was dealing with when you were in her womb, those chemicals end up being in your blood and being in your DNA. And so I was telling this person that if you think of it as a vortex, I can remember when I was young, we were canoeing, and there had been a rainstorm recently, and I lived up north of Dayton where one of the major dams are that was put in place to prevent flooding because in 1913 there was a huge flood in Dayton that killed thousands of people. And we were canoeing, and all of a sudden we saw that a canoe up in front of us was struggling because close to this dam was a vortex that was basically sucking the canoe into it. And I can remember just being scared half to death that we were going to get pulled into this. And I told the person about a similar vortex yesterday when it comes to weight loss and weight management of a person, that it's hormones, stress hormones, that create fat, and fat that anchors hormones or emotions to us. And so often when you are in a state of fight or flight, when you are fearful of losing something, when you're fearful of not being enough, the body sees that as a threat and produces it puts the body in a state where it's ready to fight. And so if it's a theoretical fight, right, just an argument, the body doesn't know a difference between that and what I always say is a saber-toothed tiger. And so the body, the biology starts positioning us to fight, which means it has to position the brain and the blood throughout the body to get ready to fight. And one of those things is releasing cortisol into the blood to give us a lot of energy quickly.
Yeah.
And so where God put the majority of our cortisol receptors is in our belly and in our butts, so that you could take a punch in the stomach and have more fat there to protect you, or in your butt so that you could get knocked down and have some padding. And so when you're in this state of fight or flight, there's about 1,000 calories in every ounce of fat. The body works against you when you're trapped in a state of fight or flight to put on weight and to keep it, because it views you to be in a fight, and it wants to store fat and create fat as little reserves that you can draw from if you get stuck up in that tree for 3 to 6 months waiting for the saber-toothed tiger to go away.
Yeah.
And so what I was saying is often, and this is, we can put some of these articles into the podcast, just the epigenetics, the how our DNA is affected by our parents. Absolutely undeniable link between parents that have emotions that are trapped in their bodies, usually in their fat, right? Basically set their child up and give their children the DNA where they are going to be more susceptible to building fat in the same areas because it was transferred through the breast milk or through the blood or through the DNA, that they have the same arrangement of fear living inside of them. And so what I was saying to this person yesterday is that often you can see that your emotions anchor fat to your body through cortisol and some other fight or flight hormones. But in the same way, fat will anchor emotions to your body. So it's like, why am I so emotional? Why can't I handle this? Why am I always getting upset? Why am I always fearful? Well, because the fat that the genes that you inherited brought fat or helped you collect fat way too easily. And now that fat is a reserve of the same emotions that your parents or grandparents were dealing with, that is keeping you in that state of fight or flight or helplessness.
So in your conversation with this person yesterday or not, what do you do? Is it a matter of, it can't just be then a matter of weight loss, right?
Well, it's never really a matter of weight loss, right? Again, the emotion ship here is, I don't like the way I look. I'm not as valuable because I'm heavy. Nobody's going to think I'm attractive. I'm not worth anything. That's the emotion ship. But what's going on there is fear and worthlessness, right? And so when a person is in that situation, and I can't tell you how many people and family members I've talked to over the years that will literally starve themselves. They will fast and starve themselves and drink nothing but like black coffee, and they still can't lose weight. Yeah. And the reason for that is because they fail to understand that thoughts are food. That when we think certain thoughts, it releases hormones and chemicals in our body, no different than when we put a physical piece of food into our body. And so basically what we do at Body Garage Dayton is we try to understand the whole person. We ask them questions about their parents and about their grandparents to figure out emotionally where they are locked up and why they are still living in a state of fight or flight, which keeps them from being able to release weight. You can't sleep. You can't heal your body. You can't feel rested and full of vitality when you are stuck in a state of fight or flight. And that could be from broken family relationships. That could be from how you process your value. That could be, 1,000 different things that put you in a mindset that sees what's not versus what is.
Mm-hmm. What about people? I mean, there's no ideal body type.
Sure.
Right? Like we were all created to be very different. And so your healthy might look different than my healthy.
Right, sure.
How do we then know if we're healthy?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to we have to embrace where we are right now and be okay with whatever we look like an hour from now, a day from now, a week from now, a year from now, if we are doing what we have determined to be the right thing for us. And so I can't control if I make the foul shot. I can control if I take 100 free throws after every practice. And so that's not the important piece. The important piece is becoming content with that lifestyle or that mentality. And that's what I struggle to get across to people. So we've got three things there. We've got the results of making the free throw. We've got the discipline of practicing the free throws. And then we've got a mentality that says my best is good enough. Yeah. Ultimately, when it gets to helping people to a place where their body opens up and can become the best version of itself and have the most strength and vitality, it's that third thing. It's the mentality that is hard to fix because we got DNA from mom, dad, grandma, grandpa that said, nope, it's not my best that's good enough. It's this result that's good enough. It's people's acknowledgement that's good enough. And so until you can get to the place in your life where your best is good enough, and you map out for yourself that says, okay, this is what the disciplines look like that I want to live into. And instead of my feelings or my desires leading and ruling my life, my discipline and my beliefs are going to, then you're going to have a hard time with embracing a mentality-driven lifestyle. Like, one of the reasons that I can get over things quickly is I don't believe that my life is about what I produce. And that's on both sides of the coin. When I mess up, I can forgive myself really quickly because it's not being mistake-free that makes me who I am. When I hit something out of the park, I get over it and it doesn't turn me on and I don't feel great about it because that's not who makes me what I am. I was thinking about this with a friend that I saw on social media this week that has fallen back into something they dealt with probably 10 years ago. And they used to work out like crazy. I mean, like sometimes 2 times a day, 7 days a week. And when they started getting healthy emotionally, they couldn't keep up that pace. And the reason they couldn't keep up that pace is because something unhealthy was driving it. Yeah. Well, over a 10-year period of time, they stopped taking care of themselves and they got lured into a thought process that is unhealthy. And now I kind of see them back in that place where they're entertaining an old message that says, doing this or looking this way is where my value is at. Yeah. And so I think a healthy person does not get overwhelmed with results, good or bad. Mm-hmm. My routine is what makes me valuable. Who I am and my intentions to do things right and my intentions to make a difference in people's life is enough for me. Yeah. And as long as I know that I'm trying that, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, that's so hard. It's so hard when we live in a society where all of the messaging is thinness. Sure. Right. And at any cost, it's like, who cares what you're carrying from grandma? Like, just be thin, right? Like, who cares if you're emotionally healthy? This is how you're supposed to look. And so we were talking in a different conversation on Sunday about how important it is to like stay in your lane and keep your eyes on your own lane, right? Rather than looking at what everybody else is doing, because like we said, their healthy looks different than ours, or their best being good enough might look different than my own.
Well, the emotionship is value and worth, right? In what creates it. And so it's so hard. And what's happened here is industry has inverted this equation, and a lot of people can't figure it out, that we were made to make a difference and to contribute to a community, period, right? We were made to make a difference with our life and to contribute to a community. Here's where the inversion takes place. A lot of people that are selling something that want or need customers say that if you have this or if you can sell this, you're going to be valuable. But the truth of the matter is, it really rests in, you have to get to a place where you are okay with yourself, where you are and how you are, in order to be positioned to inherit or to execute on your purpose and your passion. Your purpose and passion and sense of fulfillment in life isn't going to come because you have something or you can sell something. It's going to come because of your mentality that it's not having things or doing things that make you valuable. And when you can live that way and have that mentality, then you will do things and then you will have things. And so what consumerism or materialism says is it's all about the end result, doing and having, because it knows, and it's worked off a little bit of truth, that if we're healthy, we're going to do things and we're going to have things. But that's not what leads to doing things and having things. What leads to doing things and having things is being completely okay with who I am, where I'm at, and where I'm going, and leaving the results, to God.
So can you have that mentality? I think I know the answer to this, but I'm asking it anyway. Can you have that mentality when you have all of that quote unquote junk in your roaming around your blood and your body from grandma and great grandma and all of the people that have gone before you.
There are a lot of examples where you can recognize what you're up against, and the awareness of it and the acknowledgement of it will go a long way. Yes. What we also know from studying trauma and poverty is that when you are in a state of fight or flight, the blood goes from the front of the brain in the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala and makes you very reactionary. You're not proactive, you're reactive. And so one of the things that I will try to say in this TED Talk, if it's something that I end up getting to do, is just we have to have a trauma-informed approach to personal development because cortisol in the blood and living in a state of fight or flight makes us so reactionary.
Yeah. So what does that look like? How do people have a trauma-informed approach to personal development?
Well, I think instead of taking everything personally, all of their shortcomings personally, and overreacting to other people's criticism of them, I think it starts with an awareness of, I have been biologically positioned to think and respond this way, but that's not me. I don't have to do this. And so that's kind of what I've been telling myself. The more responsible you are, or the further you go, the more opportunity you have to manage your beliefs versus your feelings. And so I've been put in a scary position, going through COVID-19 and having, over 100 people that I employ. I have been given the opportunity to confront feelings that tell me what could happen. And one of the things that I've had to consistently acknowledge and remind myself of is, this is a feeling, right? Like, this is a feeling and I don't have to give into it. As tempting as it is, as right as it feels to give into it and to make a quick decision, like, I do not have to give into my feelings. My feelings are not facts. I can respond in a healthy way and say, these are just my feelings. Here are my beliefs. Here's who I'm going to talk to, or whatever the right response is. And I'm moving forward. And what ends up happening is you end up living another day and having another opportunity to put another arrow or piece of understanding in your bag, and you're that much healthier. I believe that 99% of success is patience and just getting through it and living another day and not taking yourself out of the game. Yeah. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, it's just staying with it and not quitting.
That's really good news and really bad news for me. Patience is tough.
Well, it is hard because we want it now, but you don't build big boats or big planes overnight. I say on a regular basis, like, big planes require long runways. And if you're looking for a short runway that a single prop or a jet can take, or an aircraft carrier, can take off of, and you're trying to build something bigger, like, things aren't lining up for you. Your expectations are not lining up with the reality that everyone that's ever walked the earth has had to deal with. Yeah. Big planes that carry a lot of people take a long runway, that carry lots of stuff and resources to people in need, take long runways. And I think, the temptation is to not have enough faith to believe that I could spend 30 years of my life for 3 years of, noticeable impact. But history is kind of that equation. It's a 10-to-1 equation.
Yeah. So where do we start if you're bringing up a lot here in terms of our physical and emotional health?
Sure.
In recognizing, do we have to know the particularities of what has been passed on to us, or just an awareness that there is stuff passed on to us?
Reverse engineer it through journaling, right? Start journaling every day when you wake up and right before you go to bed, the emotions that you started the day with and the emotions you're ending the day with. I think the most difficult thing to deal with is literally being okay with peace and quiet, and being happy and full of gratitude in the peace and quiet. So many of us were raised with performance-driven chemicals in our breast milk or our bottle that we have a very hard time being okay with stillness. And it's one of the many benefits of COVID-19. Not that I would ever wish, this on anyone, but families having to be in homes together, eating around the same table together, fathers and mothers not working 40, 60, 80 hours a week, but being present. Like, it's very, very good for us. And I think what a lot of us have learned is it's very difficult to be okay with the world full of peace and joy and contentment when nothing is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so until you have the base that you can say when nothing is happening, good or bad, I am full of peace, joy, and contentment and gratitude. Until you can get there are other things driving your life. There are other messages driving your life, and therefore you'll never be healthy. Your biology will never be positioned to help you win or the generations after you to win.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that for a second, just in dealing with your children, regardless of their age, right? The quote that comes to me in this conversation is one that you recently posted on your I think you posted on your Instagram about, or maybe it was a blog. Where did you post the thing about planting a tree?
Yeah, it was on Instagram.
Yeah. The Chinese proverb about when's the best time to plant a tree?
Right.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Or 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The
yeah.
next best time is today.
Right.
Okay. That went smoothly. But that, regardless of the age of any listener right now, like, you are never kind of past the point of being able to pursue wellness and wholeness, right, and writing a different story, like taking your story to a place different from where your ancestors took it.
Right.
And so how do we start to, what do we do with our kids? Even if, maybe they're adults who, regardless of their age, there's so many times where with my older daughter, Evie, I'm like, I hear myself saying, you are so much like me. Yeah. And I am then taken back literally to a time, not literally, figuratively, to a time when I'm a kid, and my mom said the same thing to me.
Sure.
Like, she said that to me my whole childhood. You are so much like me. Because it's frustrating, right? Because we butt heads.
Right.
And Evie is a lot like me. And so, but I want more for her. I want better for her. I want healthier. She's my kid. I love her. I want her to soar. And so how do we help lead our children to kind of undo what even I have helped her do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm most passionate about is culture. And culture is, again, a word, right, made of shapes that we call letters, mm-hmm, that is attempting to describe a reality. The reality of the word culture are the behaviors that are driving any family, person, or organization, right? And so what is... The children are becoming or are being conditioned by the culture of the home. Now, where most of us go wrong is that we don't understand that there is a culture in every home, in every person's life, and in every business, whether we know it or not. The question is it intentional or unintentional, right?
Yeah.
So what I would say for individuals is start off with, what are your core values, right? List out 3 to 5 core beliefs for you as an individual. Do that for your home, and then hopefully your organization is doing that. And those core values or core behaviors are what make us who we are, and they've got to be written down because they're not feelings. They're things that we want, they're priorities and beliefs that we want to live into, versus being guided by an unintentional culture, which is the makeup and the leftovers of the DNA of those that have gone before us that we haven't acknowledged. And because we haven't acknowledged them or become aware of them, right? So aware first and then acknowledge. Because we haven't become aware of them or acknowledged them, we become susceptible to them and continue to live a life and respond to them as they drive us. And so I would just say that, an individual can start off with 3 core values, 3 to 5 core values, and then grow those into your home. One of the things that I have said in our home is that, just talking about the importance of it's always better to be honest. I don't care about the mistake that you made. I don't care about that. I'd rather you be honest about your mistakes than lie and try to cover up your failures.
Right.
And so until an individual and a family charts out, this is where we want to go, you will just drift on the river of being unintentional, and you won't know what you're measuring. You will constantly, and this is the emotion chip, right? You will constantly be reactive and live a reactive life versus a proactive that says, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and this is what we're going after. And that's essentially, the first couple of messages in this podcast about the 20-mile march.
Yeah.
How do I take 4 priorities, live into them 5 days a week, every week of my life, so that I can become who I want to be versus who my schedule or my DNA or my the energy that is around me at any given time makes me to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so the 20-mile march feels so important in this conversation because it's like that's the map, right? Like that's kind of what guides us, and those are like the stakes in the ground that we can place and follow, and like that kind of keeps us on the path of where we want to go. Because what I keep thinking of is in the midst of all of this, as we are adults even, and my husband and I mean, this happens all the time where it's like we're still figuring ourselves out.
Sure.
And we're still figuring out like what it is that has been passed down to us. I cannot tell you how many times, even just weekly, maybe it's the season that we're in, but where Darren will be like, I didn't even realize that this is true. Like, this is a thing about me. Like, this is something that I got from my dad, or this is a memory that I have from my childhood that like is impacting me today. Like it's just, it's so fluid.
Yeah.
The awareness, it just continues to come and to grow. And so that can take you off course pretty quickly.
Well, it's understanding the holistic nature of life, that life is a series of individual 24-hour periods. Right. So the totality of our life is made up of 24-hour segments. And, in the same way, you're either in fight or flight or rest and repair, not both. You are either living a proactive life or a reactive life. And the only way to go from living a reactive life to a proactive life is to clearly chart out what your beliefs are as an individual, as a family, or an organization, and say, I'm not going to let my feelings or what I'm up against deter me from what I have determined to be the priorities of my life, the core values or core behaviors of my life. I'm not going to sacrifice my personal health at the expense of my profession, right? I'm not going to live in a way that says what I produce is more valuable than who I am. Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is who you are and how you take care of yourself sets you up to accomplish things in life.
So in how we parent or how we talk to our kids, how we raise them, these sort of markers like the 20-mile march and like the values of our family are good and helpful, but they don't outweigh, this is a question, what has been passed down through the generations. Is that correct? I mean, because that's still in their bodies.
Well, we have an opportunity to alter our DNA through our habits and our beliefs.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like my daughters, for example, 2 years and 6 months, it's in them already.
Sure.
Right? Like whatever has been passed down from my grandma, my mom, me, it's in them already. And so as my husband and I work to create a healthier home and we have values and we're teaching them, out of those values, what is the work that still needs to be done in terms of what has been passed down generationally? Because I'm even thinking back to, I'm still nursing my kid and here I am stressy Bessie about moving, you know, like there are still things that I'm passing down to my children. And so I guess the question is, in addition to the advice that you've given about the values and all of that, the 20-mile march, what do we do about the generational stuff that has been passed down?
Your complete body rebuilds itself to be new every 7 years. And so what I think is important is that you can fast track it by taking certain supplements and going to wellness boutiques like Body Garage Dayton, which, are good things. But what is most important is that you become aware of what your general disposition is, you acknowledge it, and then you start creating intentional behaviors that come out of your beliefs to counteract it and say, no, you know what? We can rest and we can take a day off because we know our value is not in what we do or what we can accomplish, but who we are, and who we are needs rest. And so everything from the thoughts that you put in your head or you allow to rest in your head, to the food that you put in your body, to the people that you hang out with, to the music that you listen to the places that you go, all of them are a net positive or a net negative when it comes to those beliefs that you have charted out as your core behaviors. They're either reinforcing that and helping that and moving it forward, which is confronting your DNA and slowly changing your DNA as you produce, 150 billion new cells each and every day, or they're taking it in the wrong direction. And so there's no quick fix to it,
Sure.
but slowly over time, you can become that person that you want to be that's based on your beliefs versus continuing to feed a false narrative that has more to do with what you've been given.
I love the idea of journaling in the morning.
Yeah.
You're like writing down your thoughts, especially if you don't know all of the stories from your parents or your grandparents. If you don't know those people at all, or you're just unaware of, obviously we can't know everything, but that I believe that your journal will start to tell those stories from them.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking with a family here recently that every time I had spoken with them, I energetically sensed, right, which the Christian community would say the Spirit was telling me, right, was speaking to me, that there was adultery in the family line. And I kept being told no. And this went on over a pretty long period of time. And one of the children ended up finding themselves in a situation where now they were having an extramarital affair, whether it was physical or not, doesn't matter. And finally they went back to their parent, and the parent finally acknowledged that something happened when they were a child, and in order to protect the dignity of the parent, they just kept it from the children. And all of the children dealt with sexual identity type stuff because energetically that's the environment, the suspicion, the lust, the secretness, they were raised in that energetic environment, like a Wi-Fi per se, and that altered their genes and made them that much more susceptible to that behavior. And so that's why it's important to journal when you start the day off or at the end of the day, even if it's just a paragraph or two, to say, here's how I'm feeling. Oh, why am I dealing with this? Because I inherited this. Okay, well, that's not me. What are my beliefs about this situation?
That's fascinating.
Well, again, getting back to the idea of the real reason, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
We use this phrase because most people say, well, everything happens for a reason, as if God is the puppet master pulling strings and we've just got to go along with it. The truth of the matter is we are all energy, and we're all giving off energy and receiving energy, and often are unaware of the energy that has gone before us and still affecting us to this day.
Right.
Life is a lot more explainable than we think. Yeah. Believe it or not, God is much more interested in partnering with us and empowering us than just leaving us to be victims of this invisible story that often leaves us hurting or feeling in need.
I think that is an important takeaway too, is that we don't have to be victims to what has the stage that has been set for us prior even to our birth, that we can take ownership. And for those that are feeling helpless in like how they feel in their own body, or, the energy that they are kind of soaking in, that there is another way, that we don't have to just sort of keep floating along in those waters.
100%. That's the victory. That's the good news, is that we don't have to remain in these situations. And if you can get rid of all of the unhealthy stigmatism to the story of Jesus and you can really dive in and just read actually what he was about, he came and did what he did in order to set people free from all of the things that don't matter, so that people can be different and people can have a life change, that they can become someone new. It's what it's all about.
Yeah. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode, shoot, maybe 15?
You started by saying 16.
See you next time.
Okay.